"Beat me in tennis, and I'll marry you," Clarissa Morrow declared, her voice slicing through the polite chatter of the country club. The late summer sun caught the perfect white of her dress, making her seem like a queen on her court. Her smirk was a weapon, aimed directly at the man in the faded gray janitor's uniform standing before her. Laughter rippled through the crowd of fine suits and shimmering dresses, a cruel, echoing wave. They thought it was a joke, a rich woman's game at the expense of the hired help. All eyes landed on Aaron Holt. Just moments ago, he was invisible, a man who scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans in the quiet hours. Now, he was the center of a humiliating spectacle, gripping the handle of a dusty broom he'd been holding when Clarissa had called him out. His face burned, his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. But in his tired eyes, behind the years of exhaustion and quiet sorrow, a flicker of an old fire sparked to life. He was a single dad who had given up everything. But today, he was being pushed into a spotlight he never wanted. Aaron's story was a ghost that haunted the edges of this very club. Years ago, he wasn't a janitor. He was a rising star in college tennis, a kid with a rocket for an arm and a scholarship that promised a future bright with roaring crowds and flashing lights. But life doesn't always follow the script. His wife, the love of his life, became sick just after their daughter, Maya, was born. The medical bills piled up like mountains of snow, burying his dreams, his savings, and his future. When she passed away, Aaron walked away from it all. He left the scholarships, the pro offers, and the roar of the crowd behind. He chose a life of quiet sacrifice to be there for his little girl. He took the jobs nobody else wanted, working with his hands to make sure Maya could eat, go to a good school, and have the childhood he could no longer afford for himself. No one at the club knew. To them, he was just the man who cleaned up their messes. They never saw him in the quiet hours of dawn, when the courts were empty and the world was still asleep. They never saw him pick up an old, cracked racket and practice his swings. The smooth, powerful motions, a secret conversation with the man he used to be. They never saw him at Maya's bedside, reading her stories about forgotten heroes who were mocked and looked down upon, but who found their strength when it mattered the most. He had built a life of dignity in the shadows, but Clarissa's challenge, her mocking words, had dragged him violently into the light. The crowd was still buzzing, their laughter sharp and painful. He could have turned around. He could have swallowed the bitter taste of his pride and melted back into the background where he felt safe. But then his eyes found her. Sitting on the grass at the edge of the court was Maya, clutching her worn-out teddy bear, her big eyes fixed on him. In her world, her father was the strongest man alive. She believed he could do anything, even when everyone else told him it was nothing. In that single silent look from his daughter, Aaron knew he couldn't walk away. He couldn't let her see him back down. He took a step forward, with a voice that was steadier than he felt, a voice that seemed to surprise everyone, including himself. He accepted the challenge. A hurried search produced a spare racket, left behind by some guest. It felt heavy and clumsy in his hand, the grip unfamiliar after so long, but he held it with a quiet, solid strength. Clarissa's smirk returned as she twirled her expensive racket, ready for a quick and humiliating victory. The match began. Clarissa's first serve was a flash of white, fast and sharp, meant to end the point before it even started. But to the shock of everyone watching, Aaron's arm moved in a blur of perfect, practiced timing. The ball met his strings and flew back over the net with a clean, powerful stroke. A low murmur spread through the crowd. The janitor could play. Clarissa brushed it off as a lucky shot. She served again, this time with more force, aiming for the corner. Aaron was there. Fueled by years of hidden practice and a deep well of silent pain, he returned it again. His movements weren't flashy, but they were precise, calm, and breathtakingly skilled. As the game went on, the crowd's laughter died, replaced by a stunned, disbelieving silence. Each swing of Aaron's racket seemed to carry a story of the weight of his loss, the depth of his sacrifice, and the unbreakable love he had for the little girl watching him. His body remembered the rhythm, the power, and the grace his mind had tried so hard to lock away. He was no longer just a janitor. He was the player he was always meant to be. Clarissa's confidence began to crack. Sweat appeared on her forehead. Her elegant shots became wild and frustrated. Aaron's face remained a mask of calm focus. His only fuel was the sound of Maya's small hands clapping from the sidelines, her smile a beacon brighter than the afternoon sun. The final rally was a storm of motion. Clarissa threw every ounce of her strength into one last, desperate swing. But Aaron moved with a quiet certainty, meeting the ball one last time. He hit a devastating strike that shot past her, landing perfectly inside the line. The game was over. Silence. A thick, heavy silence fell over the court as the janitor stood victorious over the CEO. The spell was broken by a single, joyful, "Daddy!" Maya ran onto the court, launching herself into her father's arms. Aaron lifted her high, his chest heaving with exhaustion and emotion. Tears he had held back for years finally streamed down his face. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't invisible. The world saw him, not as a janitor, but as a father, a fighter, and a man of incredible strength. Clarissa stood frozen, her mockery replaced by pure humiliation. But as she looked at the man and his daughter, she saw something more than a man who had beaten her. She saw someone who had fought battles she could never imagine and had come out unbroken. Her racket slipped from her hand. Then, something amazing happened. The crowd, once so quick to laugh at him, erupted into thunderous, genuine applause. It washed over Aaron, but he barely noticed. He didn't care about Clarissa's foolish promise of marriage. Her words meant nothing. All that mattered was the look of pure pride shining in his daughter's eyes. He had given her a memory that would last forever, proof that her father was a hero, no matter what uniform he wore.